Ethan Cole was pushing his maintenance cart through the basement hallway of Ashford Tower when his phone buzzed with an urgent message. The school nurse's words made his stomach drop instantly. Emma's fever had spiked to 102 degrees, and he needed to come immediately. Without thinking twice, he rushed toward the nearest elevator, not noticing the small brass sign that read, "Executive Only." The doors opened at the 40th floor, and a woman in a black designer suit stepped inside, her eyes fixed on her phone. Then she looked up slowly, her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, neither of them moved at all. "Ethan," she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. He stood frozen in place, his hand still gripping the cart handle with white-knuckled intensity. 8 years had passed, 8 long years since he had last seen that face, and yet he would have recognized her anywhere, in any crowd, in any lifetime. But everything about her had changed dramatically since then. Victoria Ashford was no longer the young architect with a messy ponytail and paint-stained sneakers who used to steal bites of his lunch during their long design sessions together. She was a CEO now, wrapped in tailored black wool and quiet authority, her posture rigid with the weight of an entire company resting on her shoulders. Her eyes were colder than the Chicago winter howling against the windows 40 floors below. "Miss Ashford," he said, his voice carefully neutral and professionally distant, as if she were just another tenant in this building, as if she had never meant anything to him at all, as if they had not once planned an entire future together, filled with promise. Victoria did not respond immediately to his greeting. Her gaze traveled slowly down his maintenance uniform, taking in the faded blue fabric with the company logo stitched on the chest in white thread. She studied the worn tool cart with its scratched metal surface and slightly rusted wheels. Something flickered across her expression, quick as a shadow passing over still water. It was not pity, it was something sharper than that, something that cut much deeper into old wounds that had never properly healed. The elevator hummed softly as it continued its steady descent through the building. The silence between them was heavy enough to crush bone, thick enough to make breathing difficult for both of them. Neither reached for the panel of buttons, neither pretended to check their phones for messages. They simply stood there in that confined space, two people who had once shared absolutely everything, now separated by 8 years and a gulf of unspoken words that stretched wider than any ocean. His phone buzzed again, breaking the tense silence between them. He glanced at the screen and read the update. "Emma's fever is holding at 102. Please hurry." His jaw tightened visibly, the muscle jumping beneath his skin. His hands trembled slightly against the cart handle despite his efforts to keep them still. "Your daughter?" Victoria asked, her tone carefully flat and impossible to read, giving nothing away about what she might be feeling. Ethan looked up, meeting her eyes directly for the first time since she had spoken his name in that shocked whisper. "How do you know I have a daughter?" "I don't know for certain, I guessed." She turned her face away from him, staring at the brushed steel doors as if they held all the answers. "You look like a father now. There's something different about you." The elevator chimed softly, announcing their arrival at the ground floor. The doors slid open to reveal the marble lobby, bustling with people in expensive coats hurrying through the afternoon cold, their breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Ethan pushed his cart forward and walked out without looking back at her. He did not say goodbye. He did not slow down or hesitate for even a moment. He simply disappeared into the crowd, like smoke dissolving in the winter wind. Victoria stood alone in the elevator for several long seconds, watching the space where he had been standing, watching the crowd swallow him whole until she could no longer distinguish him from the mass of strangers. Her finger hovered over the door close button, but she did not press it immediately. Only when he was completely and utterly gone did she finally press the button with a trembling hand. The doors slid shut with a soft hiss. In the sudden silence of the ascending elevator, she realized her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Ethan ran through the school parking lot, his work boots pounding against wet asphalt, still dark from the morning rain. His breath came in sharp white clouds that dissipated quickly in the cold air. The nurse's office smelled like antiseptic and old textbooks, and the particular staleness of rooms where sick children waited anxiously to feel better. Emma sat on a plastic chair against the wall, her small legs dangling above the floor, her cheeks flushed bright pink with fever, her large green eyes finding him the instant he appeared in the doorway. The relief that washed over her small face made his chest ache with an almost physical pain. She signed quickly, her small fingers moving through the air with a fluency of a native language she had learned before she could even speak. "Daddy, I waited for you. I knew you would come." Ethan dropped to his knees on the cold linoleum floor and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. He breathed in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small heart beating rapidly against his chest. "I'm here."
Sweetheart, I'm always here. Daddy will always come for you, no matter what happens. The school nurse watched them from behind her cluttered desk, her expression caught somewhere between professional sympathy and personal curiosity. She saw a man in a maintenance uniform, his clothes slightly rumpled from a long shift, his face lined with worry and exhaustion. But she also saw the way he held his daughter, gentle and fierce at the same time, protective and tender, as if she were the most precious thing in the entire universe. There was something about him that did not quite match the clothes he wore. Ethan carried Emma to his truck in the parking lot. It was a 15-year-old pickup that had seen much better decades. Its once bright blue paint now faded and chipped, its bumper slightly dented from an accident long ago, but the interior was clean and well-maintained. The car seat in the back was properly installed according to all safety guidelines. He buckled her in carefully, checking the straps twice and then a third time, adjusting the chest clip to exactly the proper position over her sternum. He drove toward Southside, navigating the familiar streets without conscious thought, his mind churning with worries he could not quiet. Emma fell asleep before they reached the apartment, her head lolling gently against the side of her car seat, her breathing slow and peaceful. He carried her up 2 flights of stairs and laid her gently on the couch, covering her with her favorite blanket, the soft one with the cartoon elephants that she had refused to give up since she was 3 years old. He sat beside her for a long time, watching her sleep, a thermometer gripped tightly in his hand. 100 degrees. The fever was finally dropping. She would be okay. She would always be okay, because he would make absolutely sure of it. That was his job now, his only job, the only thing in the world that truly mattered anymore. Emma's eyes fluttered open slowly. She looked up at him with the drowsy confusion of a child pulled from deep sleep, her green eyes unfocused at first, but gradually clearing. Her hands moved slowly through the air, forming words in the space between them. "Daddy, why were you late today? You're never late." Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. He could not tell her the truth. He could not explain that he had seen a ghost in an elevator, that his past had reached out and grabbed him by the throat in the narrow space between floors. "Daddy made a mistake," he said finally, signing as he spoke so she could follow along easily. "I took the wrong elevator by accident." Emma considered this explanation with the serious expression she always wore when thinking hard about something important. "A wrong elevator is not a mistake," she signed finally, her small face thoughtful. "It's an adventure." Ethan laughed softly, despite everything, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. It was the first real smile he had managed all day. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. It was an adventure." But behind his eyes there was a shadow that his smile could not quite reach. Today's encounter was not an adventure. It was a warning siren, screaming in the dark. He knew what he should do. He should quit this job immediately, find another building to work in, another company that offered health insurance, another part of the city where he would never have to worry about stepping into the wrong elevator. But he could not leave. This job came with comprehensive health insurance, the only insurance he could afford that covered Emma's expensive hearing aids and her regular speech therapy appointments and the specialists she needed to see every 3 months. Without this job, he had nothing. Without this job, Emma had nothing. And so he would stay, and he would hide, and he would pray every single day that today was the last time he ever had to see Victoria Ashford's face. Victoria sat in her corner office on the 40th floor of Ashford Tower, staring out at the Chicago skyline without seeing any of it. The buildings rose like gray monuments against a winter sky heavy with unfallen snow. Lake Michigan stretched beyond them, a flat expanse of steel-colored water. She had not moved from her chair in nearly half an hour. She could not work. She could not think. She could barely breathe. Her assistant knocked on the glass door. "Miss Ashford, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Postpone it." "But the board members have already arrived." "I said postpone it." The door closed. Victoria turned and opened her desk drawer, the bottom one on the right side, the drawer she had not touched in years. Inside was a small wooden box. She lifted the lid with trembling fingers. The photograph was still there, slightly faded now. Her and Ethan 8 years ago, standing in front of the first architectural model they had designed together. They were laughing at something. They were in love. They had been partners in every sense of the word. They had worked together, dreamed together, built castles in the air and figured out how to make them stand. They had talked about the future constantly, about the firm they would start together, about the buildings they would create together, about the family they might have someday. And then he vanished. No explanation, no goodbye, just a cold resignation letter sent through HR as if she were a stranger. Her father had explained it eventually. Marcus Ashford said Ethan had sold their designs to a competitor, that he had been a corporate spy, using his position and his relationship with her to access proprietary information. Everything they had shared had been a lie. Victoria opened her laptop and logged into the HR system. Ethan Cole, Maintenance Department, hired 3 months ago. She stared at the screen. Address in Southside. Emergency contact. Emma Cole, daughter, 3 months. He had been here 3 months and she had not known. Or had she?
Chosen not to know? She remembered 3 months ago when HR submitted the new hire list. She had seen Ethan Cole and felt her heart stop, but she had not let herself pause. She had scrolled past, approved the list, and closed the document. She had chosen blindness because seeing him would mean facing questions she had buried for 8 years. Questions about why a man who supposedly betrayed everything would simply disappear without fighting. Questions about why his resignation letter had felt so wrong. Questions about what had really happened. In the apartment on Southside, evening had settled in. Emma sat on the couch watching cartoons with subtitles while Ethan made dinner. Tomato soup and grilled cheese crusts, cut off just the way she liked. He sat beside her and checked her forehead. Cooler now. The fever was almost gone. Emma signed without looking away from the television. "Daddy, will you be late again tomorrow?" "No, sweetheart. Daddy will be on time." She turned to look at him with an intensity that sometimes startled him. She was only 6, but she noticed things that other children her age did not. "You look sad," she sighed. "I'm not sad, just tired." "Tired and sad are different. You're both." Ethan pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "Maybe a little sad, but being with you makes it better. Then I'll stay with you forever, so you're never sad again?" He smiled, but his eyes burned with tears he would not let fall. "That's a deal, sweetheart." 2 weeks passed slowly. Ethan restructured his entire existence around careful avoidance. He memorized Victoria's schedule by studying the building's internal calendars. He knew exactly when she arrived and when she left, which elevator she used, which hallways she walked. He took the service elevator exclusively, switched to early morning shifts, ate lunch in the maintenance closet. He became a ghost in a building where he had once been a rising star. But Emma knew nothing about his strategies. She was 6 years old, endlessly curious, and completely unaware that her father was running from his past. The day started like any other winter morning. The school called at 7. The heating system had malfunctioned. All students should stay home. Ethan had no babysitter, no family in the city, no backup plan. He had no choice but to bring Emma to work. He set her up in the employee break room with coloring books and her iPad. "Daddy will be back in 1 hour. Stay here. Don't go anywhere." Emma nodded,
but her eyes had already found the elevator lights visible through the glass door. 30 minutes later, she was bored. The coloring books were finished. The cartoons had ended. The elevator lights were so interesting. Surely it would be okay to just look around. She slipped out and padded down the hallway. The elevator doors opened, as if waiting for her. She pressed a button at random. The doors opened on a floor that looked different. The carpet was softer. The walls had paintings. Everything smelled like flowers and expensive things. A woman stepped out of a door down the hallway carrying a takeout container, looking exhausted. Emma recognized her immediately, the flower lady from before. She waved and signed, "Hello." Victoria stopped. She looked at the child with chestnut hair and green eyes and a tiny hearing aid behind her ear. Those green eyes, exactly like Ethan's, the same color, the same shape, the same way they looked at the world with quiet curiosity. "Hi there," Victoria said softly, kneeling. "Are you lost?" Emma pointed to her ear and shook her head. She had not heard the question clearly. Victoria understood. She spoke slowly and carefully. "Where is your daddy?" Emma pointed toward the elevator, then down. Victoria could not stop looking at this child who carried Ethan's features so clearly. "What's your name?" Emma spelled it in sign language. E-M-M-A. Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. That's a beautiful name. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Ethan appeared, breathing hard, panic on his face. "Emma, Daddy told you to stay." He stopped when he saw Victoria. Emma signed excitedly. "Daddy, this lady is nice. She smells like flowers." Ethan took Emma's hand and pulled her close. "Sorry to bother you, Miss Ashford. It won't happen again." Victoria watched him, watched Emma, watched the protective tenderness in his hand. "She's not a bother. She's lovely." Ethan did not respond. He led Emma to the elevator, and Victoria was left watching. That night, Victoria could not sleep. Emma's eyes haunted her. Those green eyes looking at the world with innocent trust. The tiny hearing aid, the way her hands moved through the air, speaking a language of gesture and grace. What had happened to Ethan in the last 8 years? Where had this child come from? Why was he pushing a maintenance cart in the same building where he had once designed structures that touched the sky? On Monday morning, Victoria called Helen, the head of HR. "I need Ethan Cole's complete file from 8 years ago." Helen was quiet for a moment. "Those files are archived offline. I'll need time. I need them by noon." At noon, Helen delivered a thick folder. Victoria opened it with trembling hands. Ethan Cole, 8 years ago, lead architect, high salary, excellent reviews, considered the rising star of the company. Everyone expected him to make partner. Then she found internal meeting minutes, a meeting she had never been invited to. March 15th, chaired by Marcus Ashford. Subject, investigation of design leak to competitor. Accused Ethan Cole. She searched for evidence, emails, files, anything proving his guilt. There was nothing, just a handwritten note from her father. Resolved internally. Cole resigned. She kept reading. A memo from accounting. Severance package, $0. Health insurance, terminated immediately. Blacklisted from industry. That was not how you treated someone who resigned voluntarily. That was how you destroyed someone completely. Victoria called her father. "Dad, I need to ask you about Ethan Cole." Silence on the line. "That was a long time ago, Victoria. Why bring it up?" "Because he's back."
Back. He works in this building. Fire him. I'm asking why he left. What really happened? He betrayed us. That's all you need to know. That's not an answer. Marcus sighed heavily. Victoria, you were young and in love. You didn't see clearly. I protected you. I protected this company. Let it go. The line went dead. Victoria stared at the file, resolved internally. She did not believe her father anymore. The bar on South Side was the kind of place where men drank in peace after long shifts. Ethan sat in a corner booth, peeling the label off a beer bottle, his eyes fixed on nothing. Tom, his co-worker from the maintenance team, slid into the seat across from him. "You look like hell. What's eating you?" Ethan did not answer immediately. "Have you ever done something you knew was right and lost everything because of it?" Tom raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a story." Ethan told him. For the first time in 8 years, he told someone the complete truth. It started with a routine inspection. 8 years ago, Ethan had been reviewing Riverside Housing, a low-income residential project. Something did not add up. The materials were 40% cheaper than safety specifications required. The concrete was substandard. The fire suppression systems existed only on paper. If an earthquake hit, the buildings would collapse. Hundreds of families would die in structures designed to fail. Ethan reported his findings to the compliance department. Nothing happened. He escalated to legal. They told him to drop it. He threatened to go to building inspectors himself. The next day, Marcus Ashford called him in. "You have 2 choices," Marcus said calmly. 1, resign and disappear. 2, I destroy you and Victoria. Victoria has nothing to do with this. She's my daughter. She loves you. If this becomes public, her career is over. I'll make sure everyone says she must have known, must have helped cover it up." Ethan understood. Marcus was using Victoria as a weapon against him. "I'll go, but you have to fix the materials. That's not your condition to make. It's my only condition. Fix those buildings or I burn everything down, even if I burn myself with it." Marcus studied him for a long moment. "Fine. Deal." Ethan signed an NDA that afternoon. He was gone by morning. Tom stared at him in disbelief. "You gave up everything to protect families you never met." "I was an architect. My job was to build homes for people to live in, not graves." "But you lost Victoria." Ethan was quiet. That was the part that still hurt most, losing her without being able to explain why. "Does she know any of it?" "No. Marcus made me sign an NDA, and I didn't want her to have to choose between her father and me. Some lies are kinder than the truth." Tom shook his head slowly. "You're the noblest idiot I've ever met." Ethan smiled sadly. "Maybe so." Victoria hired a private investigator. She needed answers her father would never give. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived at her apartment. The report confirmed everything. Riverside Housing had been flagged for safety violations during construction. The flag was removed 2 weeks after Ethan's resignation, following an emergency materials replacement costing over $2 million, signed by Marcus Ashford. There were recovered emails, a compliance officer complaining his concerns were ignored, a legal counsel advising that whistleblower complaints should be handled discreetly, a financial officer noting that cheaper materials represented significant savings, and a handwritten note from her father. "E.C. has agreed to resign in exchange for material replacement. NDA signed. V must never know. V. Victoria." Her father had deliberately kept her ignorant, deliberately destroyed her relationship to protect his own secrets. Victoria closed the folder. She did not cry. She had forgotten how, years ago. But something inside her was cracking, a wall built over 8 years to protect herself from exactly this moment. Ethan had not betrayed her. He had tried to save hundreds of families, and her father had destroyed his life for it. And she had believed it. She had hated him for 8 years. The next morning, Victoria went to the basement at 6 a.m. Ethan appeared, carrying coffee from the bodega down the street. He stopped when he saw her. "Miss Ashford." "Don't call me that." He frowned. She looked different, not the cold CEO, a woman struggling to hold something inside. "I know," she said, her voice trembling, "about Riverside, about my father, about why you left." Ethan went very still. "How?" "I hired someone to find the truth. I read the files. I saw my father's note." Her voice cracked. "I know you didn't betray anyone. I know my father threatened you with my career to make you leave." He did not respond. His face was unreadable. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That your father was willing to let people die for profit? That he threatened your career if I didn't disappear? You could have trusted me. Trusted you to choose between your father and me?
To watch you tear your family apart defending someone everyone called a liar? He shook his head. I was protecting you the only way I knew how. Maybe it was wrong, but it was my way. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I wasted 8 years hating you. I know. Do you hate me for it? Never. Not for 1 second of one day in all those years. They stood in the cold basement hallway, looking at each other like survivors of a shipwreck meeting after years on different islands. I have to go, Ethan said. My shift starts soon. Victoria nodded. I just needed you to know that I know, that I'm sorry. He looked at her for a long moment, then walked away. Victoria requested a private meeting with her father at his lakefront mansion. Marcus opened the door with a smile. Victoria, this is unexpected. She walked past him and set a folder on the table. Riverside Housing, 8 years ago. Explain. His smile faded instantly. Where did you get this? I've read everything. The investigation records, the emails, the note with my initial. I know what you did. I want to hear you admit it. Marcus sat down.
Heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. Why dig up something buried for a decade? Because I spent 8 years hating a man who deserved none of it, because you made me believe a lie. He was quiet, then spoke without apology. I did what was necessary to protect this company. This company that gave you everything you have, by threatening an innocent man, by destroying his career and his reputation. He was a threat. He was going to expose us to the public, the regulators, the courts. He was trying to save lives. Those buildings were death traps. Marcus slammed his hand down. Nobody died. I fixed the materials after he left. You fixed them because Ethan made you. That was his condition. He gave up everything, and the only thing he asked was that you not let innocent people die. Silence filled the room. Victoria looked at her father, the man she had admired her whole life, the man who taught her about business and strength, the man who told her emotions were weakness and trust was foolishness. You took away my love, she said, her voice steady as stone. You took 8 years of my life. You made me hate a good man because he threatened your profits. I protected you. You protected yourself. Don't pretend it was for me. Victoria stood. I didn't come for permission or forgiveness. I came to tell you things will be different now. I run this company my way. If you interfere, I release every document in that folder to the press. Marcus stared at her like seeing a stranger. You would do that to your own father? You taught me how, Dad. You taught me to be ruthless, to eliminate threats. I'm just doing what you raised me to do. She left without looking back. 1 week later, Victoria stood outside Ethan's apartment building in Southside. The neighborhood was not what she expected. Poor, yes, with battered storefronts and cracked sidewalks, but also alive, full of children playing and neighbors calling to each other. A real community. She climbed the stairs and stood outside apartment 2B for 5 minutes before she finally knocked. Ethan opened the door. Behind him, Emma sat on the floor, surrounded by colorful blocks, building something elaborate. You shouldn't be here, he said. I know, but I needed to see you. He studied her face for a long moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was small but warm, every wall covered with Emma's artwork. Bright houses and smiling suns and families holding hands. She draws beautifully, Victoria said. She wants to be an architect like her dad used to be. Victoria turned to face him. I confronted my father. I told him I know everything. I told him I'll release the evidence if he tries to stop me. How did he take that? About as well as you'd expect. Emma looked up and recognized Victoria. She waved and signed rapidly. She wants to know if you want to see what she's building, Ethan translated. The tallest building in the world. Victoria knelt beside Emma. That's amazing. You're a very talented architect. Emma signed something else. She says you can help. She needs someone to hold the base while she adds the top. Victoria took off her expensive coat and sat on the floor. They built together for nearly an hour. When the tower collapsed, Emma laughed with pure delight. She signed to her father. She says falling down is the best part, because then you get to build it again. Victoria looked at the scattered blocks and thought Emma might be the wisest person she had ever met.
Later, after Emma went to bed, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch with cold tea between them. "Where is Emma's mother?" Ethan's expression flickered. "She left when Emma was diagnosed with hearing loss, said she couldn't handle it." Victoria placed her hand over his gently. "I don't need her," Ethan said. "Emma is everything. She needs more than just a father. She has a father who loves her more than life. That's enough." Victoria smiled sadly. "You're still the most stubborn person I've ever known. And you're still the most hard-headed." They sat in silence, two people who had once known each other completely, learning to know each other again. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Victoria said. "I believed the lie too easily. I didn't fight for you. You believed your father. That's not a crime. It feels like one." Ethan turned his hand over and interlaced his with hers. "I never stopped thinking about you, not for a single day. Even when I was angry, even when I was hurt, there was always a part of me that hoped I would see you again." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself in years. "I told myself I hated you, but I was lying. I missed you every moment." He lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles gently. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. I'm still a maintenance worker with a daughter and an apartment in Southside. I don't care about any of that. You should. Not as much as you." She squeezed his hand. "Not as much as this." 3 months later, spring had finally arrived in Chicago. Ethan was no longer pushing a maintenance cart. Victoria had restored his reputation through truth, not power. She released a statement acknowledging the company's past mistakes, naming Ethan as the person who discovered them, publicly apologizing for how he had been treated. Former colleagues reached out, job offers arrived from firms across the country, but Ethan did not want to work for another firm. He stood at a podium in the Ashford conference room, Victoria beside him, Emma in the front row. "Ashford Development is launching a new division focused on affordable housing," he announced. "We're going to build homes for families who need them most, using the highest quality materials and innovative designs. We're going to prove you don't have to choose between profit and principle." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Cole, given your history, why
Did you agree to come back?" Ethan glanced at Victoria, then at Emma, waving from her seat. "Because some things are worth fighting for. Because the best way to fix a wrong is to build something right. And because the people who believed in me never gave up." Emma held up a drawing of 3 figures in front of a colorful house at the top, in wobbling letters, "Our Family." After the press conference, Victoria took Ethan's hand as they walked into the spring sunshine. "My father resigned from the board this morning, moving to Florida. How do you feel? Relieved? Sad? Angry? All of it at once. He's still my father, but I can't pretend he's the person I wanted him to be." Ethan squeezed her hand. "You're allowed to feel all of that. It makes you human." Emma grabbed both their hands. She signed, "Can we go to the park?" They walked together through the city, hand in hand in hand. People smiled at them, seeing a family, seeing hope. Millennium Park was crowded with people enjoying the warm day. Emma broke free and ran ahead, chasing pigeons, her laughter floating back on the breeze. Ethan and Victoria walked slowly, savoring the moment. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked. "Confronting your father? Choosing this?" Victoria watched Emma spin in circles on the grass. "I didn't lose anything that mattered. I just finally saw clearly." She turned to him, "And I gained everything I actually wanted. Everything. You, Emma. A chance to build something real instead of inheriting something hollow." Emma ran back, breathless. She signed rapidly. "She wants ice cream," Ethan translated. "She says we've been walking for 1,000,000 hours." Victoria crouched to Emma's level and signed carefully, the words she had been practicing for months. "Yes, chocolate." Emma's eyes went wide with surprise. She threw her arms around Victoria's neck, then signed, "You learned my language." "I'm still learning, but I wanted to really talk to you." Emma grabbed her hand and tugged her toward the ice cream cart. Victoria looked back at Ethan, who watched them with wonder and love. They got ice cream and found a bench overlooking the lake. Emma sat between them, chocolate dripping down her chin, leaning against Victoria with casual trust. The sun began to set, painting the buildings gold and rose. "You know what I think?" Ethan said. "What?" "Wrong elevators might be the best thing that ever happened to me." Victoria smiled. Emma was right.
Wrong elevators aren't mistakes, they're adventures. Emma looked up at her name and signed. What are you talking about? Adventures, Ethan signed back. Emma nodded seriously, then went back to her ice cream. Content in the way children are content when they are exactly where they are supposed to be. The three of them sat together as the sun sank below the horizon and stars appeared in the darkening sky. A man who had lost everything and found it again. A woman who had believed a lie and learned the truth, and a little girl who had brought them together simply by being herself. Behind them, city lights flickered on against the coming night, and ahead of them, stretching into the future like a road with no end, lay everything they would build.